Thanks for joining us this week on Tiger Timeout. Matt Payton with you in the studios here at Campbellsville University. It's been about a month or so since we've taken a look around Tiger and Lady Tiger basketball, the Christmas holiday, the semester break. As Coach Ginger High Colvin joins me. Coach, it's always a fun time to get away, right? To unplug, unless you don't have an opportunity to get away and unplug. And your Christmas holiday was maybe as busy as any that you've had in terms of balancing life in the real world with basketball and all that goes into that as well.
It's been jam-packed, and we usually do take a trip before we go to the Christmas holidays, but it was just we had a game the week prior to, then we always have a scrimmage right after Christmas Day, and then we took off and went to Florida. And so I feel like our feet hit the ground running, and we've not had a chance to really regroup yet. But it was a good trip. The girls enjoy it. It was a little bit warmer in Florida when we went, but not that much. But it was a good trip. We got 2 good wins down there. Yeah,
as we rewind briefly and take a look at that, you go down to Miami Lakes and Miami Gardens area, Miami Beach. So you get to spend some time down there. And last year in Hawaii, you got the games in pretty quick and then had a little more time to enjoy things. This year, it was more play on the front end and then get out of town and get back home. So any concerns, focus and staying locked into Florida Memorial and St. Thomas there?
Yeah, we worry always about focus when we go on any kind of those trips. And the girls have traditionally handled it pretty well. They go and enjoy themselves, but then they lock in pretty well when we get to the games. But that was a lot, right after Christmas, and a lot going on. But they handled themselves well, and we got through it. But now we just have to continue just chugging along in the Mid-South Conference. I think that's one thing, being in our conference, you can never take a game off.
And poor Kayla Luby, the frequent flyer miles or airport miles or whatever she logged, we've certainly had a lot of fun with that. It wasn't fun for her.
No, not at all.
In that time, there's a point you just want to get her back, period. We were even texting, I think at one point, it was like, just fly her straight to Florida. Just bypass Kentucky altogether. Just go straight to Florida.
We considered that.
You're looking at all options for her.
Yeah, she had a terrible time. Of course, she's a Nebraska girl. She left right after our left right after our game and was going to come back on the 26th, and took her basically a day and a half to get home. Her parents ended up having to drive about 7 hours to St. Louis just to pick her up because the connecting flight, and that's a term we could use over and over again, her connecting flights just kept getting messed up. And then on the way home, we thought everything was okay. It started getting messed up again. Luggage was an issue. But Kayla's pretty independent, and she handled it like a champ. I would have been in tears probably the whole time, but she handled it extremely well, and we're just glad we have her back.
You get back after the games, the wins down in Florida. You knock off St. Thomas and Florida Memorial, and it's a quick turnaround. You get back before you can even get your feet under you. You got to go to number 1. You got to go to Thomas More, and the Connor Convocation Center is a great place to play. It's always a fun environment. Playing Thomas More, maybe not so much fun, but it's a great battle. It's a great test for you guys, and certainly played pretty well. First few minutes, Thomas More got really hot, and you mentioned the post game. That may have been the difference in that game.
I think so, and Thomas More has probably, I think we have a great following, and when you come to our gym, you're always going to have a lot of fans. Their students weren't in, and they still have a great following of community fans, and deservedly so. They always have a great team they put on the floor, and so that was a tough one for us to come back, to jump back into conference play with. And it came late in the conference season for us. They're extremely talented, shoot the ball well. They shot it extremely well against us that day. We didn't shoot it well. I feel like there's probably as good a defensive team as they've been, and it showed us some areas that we really need to improve on, and we've worked a lot on that.
And you see them so late in the season, January, but you see them again before the month's even out, so it's kind of wild how the schedule worked out. Cumberland you saw pretty early in the conference schedule. You'll see them at the very end of the year. So interesting the way that the schedule falls. But you get Wilberforce, a Mid-South school, for the first time, and you got a big win over the Bulldogs. We take a look at some of the numbers from the victory for Campbellsville over Wilberforce last weekend. Maddie Boyle had a nice game for you. She continues to produce up over 80 points, Coach. And you look at some of the numbers and different things from that game with Wilberforce. That's a team really threw the bodies at you and really kind of forced you to play a little more more up tempo and different stuff. It was certainly a challenge for a team that numbers they don't look all that intimidating, but that's a good basketball team.
If you look at their overall record, no, it's not intimidating at all. But then you go back and watch games and the teams that they've played close with and given some issues to. They're long, like you said, they can throw a lot of bodies at you. If they hit shots, they're going to be able to compete with you. Fortunately, they didn't hit a lot of shots against us, and that's the difference in the game. The teams they've competed with, they've had a couple kids to get really hot and go in, but they're athletic. They play extremely hard, and it's always a good challenge for us to play different types of teams, and they're very long. I thought we handled it well. Our post got rushed a little bit, but settled in and did well. And like you said, Maddie Bull's playing extremely well basketball, good basketball right now.
Sarah Sutton certainly made it easy as well. Hit a couple big three-point buckets there for Sutton on Saturday in the win over Wilberforce. The Lady Tigers will hit the road this week. The Tigers and Lady Tigers both head to Tennessee, the western part of the state of Tennessee. They've got Bethel on Thursday, and then on Saturday at Freed-Hardeman. We'll step away, come back and talk about those matchups. Stay with us here on Tiger Timeout.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tiger Timeout continues here on the Campbellsville University Sports Network. Matt Payton with you as Campbellsville's women's and men's team get set to hit the road this weekend. They'll take off to the western part of the state of Tennessee. McKenzie and Henderson, they'll hang out in Jackson, so you'll be well traveled. Coach, as the head coach of Lady Tiger basketball, Ginger High Colvin, joins me. Campbellsville, this trip is one that you kind of circle on the calendar, and really not for reasons that you would think, but it's one of those rare this season long overnight Mid-South Conference trips. Everything's been kind of busted up and broken up, and we've kind of complained about it here and there, and I know for some it may make life easier, but this just feels normal to some degree, I guess.
It is. I think this is the way travel partners should work, going down and getting those 2 games in and being able to travel, stay. And we get to stay in Jackson, Tennessee, which is one of my favorite places. Lots of great memories there, and kind of split it up between Bethel and Freed-Hardeman. But it's going to be a tough test for us, no doubt.
This spot last year on the calendar, you went to Bethel, and Coach Chris Nelson's club picked you off. You got them pretty good here at the PAL earlier in the year. They kind of ran into a buzzsaw that day. That was the day that you guys hit double-figure threes in the first half. You could really do no wrong from an offensive standpoint. They played pretty well, and we talked about this after the game. You know, if you're Coach Nelson, you played pretty well, and you look up and you're still down 15 or 20 at halftime. That's got to be quite frustrating, but I know certainly they'd love to get a little revenge.
Oh, I know, and we just have to make sure we stick to what we do. They are a really good team. They're playing well right now, and they just continue to get better as the season goes along. They've not got that over-the-hump win, and we don't want it to be us. So we want to make sure we go down and are prepared, even if we don't hit shots, to get out there and get a win if we can.
Let's take a look at the numbers, the matchup preview of this game. Campbellsville will interplay 15-1. They'll be the number 4 ranked team in the country as they take to McKenzie, Tennessee after the latest NAI poll came out. We may touch on that here in a moment. But Bethel 7-10 on the year, and as Coach mentioned, they've struggled just a bit. 85 points a game for the Lady Tigers, 65 for Bethel, and Campbellsville's field goal percentage still tends to be one of the tops in the country. And Coach, that's a Bethel team. They won their first 5 games of the year, and so relying on some of those younger players, I think it's just taken Coach Nelson a bit to kind of get it all squared away. But as you touched on, tough games last week, Cumberland's and Georgetown, some real dog fights right there, kind of nipping at the heels of those two clubs. You mentioned just couldn't quite get over the hump, and you don't want it to be you.
I mean, you look at that 7-10, and you take that 7-10 and put it in a lot of other leagues, and it's not 7-10, and they've had to play some really top-ranked teams. So you can't really look in the Mid-South at the record and think, oh, well, this is a team that, like you said, they've been in these games, and they've had some young kids that they've incorporated in. He had some kids that miss some games with sicknesses, and so it's taken them a while to get everything back on track, and I think they are back on track, and they are one that definitely has our attention as we head down there.
Another team in your league, Freed-Hardeman, you'll visit. Obviously, you go back years in some of the games with Freed-Hardeman and Dale Neal, of course, and his time there. And I don't know, that's just a game that still, it's almost like it's weird that it's on the schedule just to see that name, Freed-Hardeman. Talk to me about that briefly, just, kind of the years past and what that game, what that team means around the NAI.
It does. Freed-Hardeman and Dale Neal is, in my opinion, the best NAI coach, and just always put quality kids on the floor. And you go down there, and he's just got a game plan for you, and just did an outstanding job. And finally got the elusive national tournament for him. He was in I don't know how many Final Fours, just never got over the hump at that final game, and he eventually did. I'm not sure what year he finally got that one, but it was much deserved. I know that. I don't know how many other teams have been to the Final Four as many times as he took his Freed-Hardeman teams, but they were always competitive, and man, they were hard to beat. That was for sure. But we had some good games with them, and we're fortunate enough to get a couple during the national tournament and move on to Final Fours and move on to final games. And it was always a dogfight for sure. It was fun because it was always, I feel like our kids were always a lot alike, and they would just battle you to the end.
Campbellsville will head to Henderson on Saturday, and Coach Josh Epperson trying to put his stamp on this program now, Coach, and a really good record for Freed-Hardeman, 12-4 this season, 66 points per game. Again, you see the Lady Tigers numbers, and that's a Freed-Hardeman team that you saw early in the conference schedule, so it's been a month or so. You did a really good job on Rachel Satterley, one of their top scorers here at the PAL. Again, you'll have your hands full there in Henderson.
Oh, we will. They're playing really well right now too, and they're a team that defends really well. They take care of the basketball. They've got Rachel Satterley, who scores the ball extremely well. They're post-game strong. They've just got everything that you need to put a good team on the floor, and going to their place and playing will be difficult. And they've got some really good wins in our league. They beat Georgetown. They beat U-Pike. They've come out and had a really good showing so far in the conference, and we expect it to be a game that we have to go down and, again, have our complete focus, complete attention to them.
We touched on the poll briefly. Thomas More stays at number 1. You'll see them at the end of the month in the Powell Athletic Center. Central Methodist moves up to 2. Dort falls in at 3rd. You guys slide in the 4th spot. And then Westmont rounds out the top 5. They lost to Menlo, and Menlo's had some nice wins this season, but they picked off Westmont. So finally, for the first time really in a while, it seems like there was some shuffling there in the top 5 a bit.
Well, there were our loss to Thomas More, and then with Westmont losing to Menlo, and that's the thing that saved us to stay probably in the top 5 was that it was to Thomas More, and Thomas More obviously is one in the country, and they've played a very tough schedule. They've went out and played Frontier teams. They've done everything they need to do to stay exactly where they are, and that was a tough loss for us. And fortunately, we were able to stay in that top 5, and hopefully we can continue to hang on and stay there. That's a tough top 5. Dort's playing extremely well. Central Methodist is as talented as any team in the country, and there's just a ton of good teams out there. You can go all the way down to 20. You can go all the way down to 30. There's some really good basketball teams. I take the teams in our league that aren't even in the top 25. U-Pike is a team that it's just mind-boggling that they're not in that top 25. I know we've gone to a deeper tournament, but very, very talented teams in our league.
Coach, best of luck this weekend.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
The Lady Tigers in action on Thursday evening. That'll be a 6:30 Eastern Time start in McKenzie, and then on Saturday a 2 Eastern start in Henderson against Freed-Hardeman. We'll step away, come back, and talk to the head coach of Tiger basketball, Brent Vernon, here on Tiger Timeout.
There's so many rewards in life. You coming into our home was one of the greatest rewards we could have ever had.
You know, it took 20 years, and I got my third child, who was 17 at the time.
It's so cool to watch the adult that you've become, and you really have done as much for us as you think we've done for you.
Welcome back. Tiger Timeout continues here on the Campbellsville University Sports Network. Matt Payton with you as we transition from women's coverage over to the Tiger basketball team. Brent Vernon joins me as Campbellsville gets back into Mid-South Conference this weekend. They'll be with the Lady Tigers. Mid-South Conference doubleheaders Thursday and Saturday. Coach, not quite as much to comb through like we did, but the women, they had that Florida trip. You guys got maybe a little R&R. I don't know if that exists in season, but over the Christmas holiday, you get the game with Shawnee State in, and you got to kind of almost unplug there for a few weeks. A long break from the 17th. You didn't return to play until the 5th. Is that layoff good for you guys? Is that bad? Is it too much time? Is it just enough?
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
It's back and forth. I think this year is great for us. I really do. You know, we've suffered a lot of injuries. We went through literally 6 weeks of illnesses throughout our team to where we just kept passing it around. I think we needed the break. I think because we were fighting and just couldn't get over that hump, we needed the mental break just to take a step back. Is it too long? Potentially, but with us not playing until we did against Thomas More, we got to come back, really get after it for a week and get some great practices in leading up to that, and it was much needed. I'm very impressed with how our guys really handled that break.
You get everybody back a few days after Christmas. You bring them back in, get them on campus, and what's that process like? Reacclimating, getting back into it. You're hoping they're working out when they're home and doing some stuff, but what's that process like? It's not quite starting all over, but maybe sort of, kind of is.
Very, very close. Obviously, you tell them before they leave, you can't start from scratch. You have to be able to do something while you're gone. We were back on the 27th, and we were right back to practice. That first night's a lot of running and shooting, but that second day's right back into the gym, going to getting in a defensive stance and competing against each other. I had a couple two-a-days in there, which is needed just for one practice to be a little bit normal, and the second practice to maybe work on your offense, refresh a little bit, tweak some things, do some things a little different, which we've done. And again, our guys really handled it well and probably put together a string of 7 or 8 of our best practices we've had all year. And with what we've gone through and where our record stood, unfortunately, that was the most positive thing for me because it shows that we've got a lot of fight in us.
Maybe a microcosm of your year is you can't get 2 guys from California back. I mean, it's just it's frustrating. And you and I had talked about this a little bit on the phone. You had this massive storm that comes through, and it throws everything out. And one airline in particular was really struggling with that, happened to be the one they were on. It was just, man, dealing with that on top of everything else. Like, what in the world could go wrong next?
As a coach, you sit back and reflect and do some stuff. And it's one of those things I heard a coach say over the break, you work with what you got, you live with it, and you got to figure it out. And that's what it is. I hated it for those guys because they were doing everything in their power to get back. But we got back with the guys we had. We went straight to work, and that's just where we've been. And that's what we've had to do all year this year. And again, commend our guys for how they've handled it.
And happy to report Trayshawn Smoots and Brandon Jackson are now back on campus. So that's always a good thing. Coach, let's talk briefly about Thomas More. You go up, man, that's a really an interesting environment. Northern Kentucky, it's a great place to play. I feel like the shooting layout is kind of tough with the rails that line that walking track around. If you're not used to that, it's a staggered backdrop. It's a bit interesting. I'll tell you what, you struggled a little offensively in the first half. You had a chance to win that basketball the last few minutes, and that goes back to what you were talking about, those really good practices that you were having when you got back.
Yeah, I mean, Thomas More at the time was second in the nation They came back the 26th instead of the 27th, but they played on the 29th and 30th. So they had 2 games under their belt where we had basically about 20 days of no games. So I knew there'd be some rust. There was not as much rust as I thought. Competed well. Thomas More early on jumped out, I think took an 8-point lead. And our guys did a really great job of just handling, not panic. And next thing you know, I think we had a 1-point lead at that time. And they ended the half on a good run. We made a long shot to cut into that. But we battled against a very good team. And as you said, with 6 minutes to go, we were right there in the thick of things, which on the road in that environment, it's about all you can ask for if you don't come out with the win.
That game really boiled down to maybe Kyle Ross. If it's a Tiger that gets hot instead of Kyle Ross, you win that basketball game. He was the one guy that night that had the hot hand for either club, and really the difference of transfer that Coach Ray is working in now. And I think he hit 4 threes, and really it kind of ended up being the difference a little bit.
It was. I think it was just his 5th game, and he shot it pretty well. But that game he had a very, very good shooting night. I thought we ran our offense extremely well. We got the shots that we wanted. It's sort of been the song of our season of we're going to eventually have to make shots. And right now we've struggled with that. But again, the confidence has to be there. We have to trust in ourselves and our teammates. And if we continue to run the offense the way we do, we're going to get great looks, and hopefully we'll continue or start converting a little bit more.
The Tigers, we'll take a break here, and we'll come back in a moment and recap the Tigers' win over Wilberforce. We'll also look ahead. They'll be on the road. They'll take to the road and hit McKenzie, Tennessee, Bethel University tomorrow evening, and then on Saturday they'll have a date with Freed-Hardeman. So stay with us here on Tiger Timeout.
Worried about your friend but don't know how to reach out?
You could say how are you or get a fake tattoo. You could ask with an app if it works for you. You could chat with them in VR. It's so good. If you think you should check in, yeah, you should. Whatever gets you talking.
Reach out to a friend about their mental health.
Whatever gets you talking.
Learn how you can help at seizetheawkward.org.
Closeout segment here on Tiger Timeout this week as we take a look at Tiger basketball, the upcoming schedule. Matt Payton with you. And before we look at the upcoming schedule, let's rewind just a bit. Coach Brent Vernon here as Campbellsville gets the win over Wilberforce. Coach, what in life did you do to deserve that? That Wilberforce team comes in here, and at times it was like they literally had 6 or 7 guys on the floor. The first few minutes was, we often say a feeling out process, figure out the speed and different things, and you touched on it a little bit. You watched it. You still can't really be prepared for that until you have to endure it.
Yeah, watch film, you see the action, you see the trap, you see the 40 minutes of nonstop. But you really don't realize how quick and fast-paced it is and everything they're doing until it's live. I mean, film just doesn't do it justice. And, we try to maybe over-exaggerate to our guys sometimes in film, but obviously you could see the first minute and a half. It was like, whoa, what's going on? I mean, because they sort of Mike Tyson'd us real quick for a second, and then we settled down. But you can't simulate it. And you said it best. It felt like they had 6 or 7 on the floor. I think the only way you can simulate it is to put 7 or 8 on the floor in a practice situation and tell them just to run crazy and trap everything. And if you get to the right spot, you're going to shoot layups, and that's what we did. I commend our guys for not getting away from it and start settling for bad shots. We didn't take tons of threes. We were at the rim, and it's the reason we shot 61% and came away with a win.
You may have had some of your worst possessions of the year in that game. You may have had some of your easiest baskets in the game. It's one of those wild things as we look at the box score. Campbellsville gets the win, 101-78 the final score. And just to kind of tell you how quirky this game was, the Tigers scored 100 points. They won by 23, and as Coach and I were talking about, turned it over 30-some times. Jay Milbert had a monster performance, Coach, 23 points, 13 rebounds, really scratching the surface of his skill set and what he's going to be able to do here. Malachi DeSouza had 15, Chandler Clements a nice day as well. But those are some, you look at box scores so often. You say, how did this team win or how did that team win? It was close, it wasn't close. That's one that you rarely see quite like that. You touched on Freed-Hardeman, who you're going to see turned it over quite a bit as well against Wilberforce.
Take away 1 or 2 games, everybody has been in that 25 to honestly 35 range in turnovers. So luckily as a coach, we had really looked at that, because if not, when I looked at our final stat sheet, I probably would have been even more distraught than I was, because, again, we had 13 at the half. Second half, they got us more than they needed to. But you just have to realize you're going to turn it over some. All of ours seemed to come in bunches. That's what was maybe the thing that bothered me the most was, we had 3 turnovers the first 4 possessions of the game. Then we settled down for a while, and then you have 3 more in a 4. We got to be able to limit that against them to where we can even expand the lead more than we did, quicker than we did. But, again, we shared the ball incredibly well. We had some guys really step up. Obviously, Jay, 10 of 11 from the field. Most of those layups or offensive rebound putbacks, but still, you have to take what the opposing team gives you. And we had many guys step up and play very good games. A wild one, if you get a chance, go back and watch that game against Wilberforce. Just an interesting basketball game, the most important thing. However, Campbellsville does get the victory. And Coach, you're on the road, and I mentioned this to Coach Ginger High Colvin, you get a little bit of normal, or what feels like more normal to me, because now you're on the road, Mid-South Conference, you get a pair. It's not one here, one there. It's what we're used to, I think. And McKenzie, obviously, down at Bethel, a tough place to play there in Crisp Arena. And then Freed-Hardeman, a team that in the top 15, I think moved up again today, maybe inside the top 10, the latest poll. That's going to be a challenge. 2 teams you had a chance against here at home, just didn't fall your way, and you'd love to go get a couple back, I know. Absolutely. Bethel's playing very good basketball right now. I think on Saturday upset Cumberland's at Cumberland's. Just playing with a lot of confidence right now, and Coach has always done a really good job there. Coach Britt, he always has his teams ready. We played him the first time and came up a few possessions short, and that's one of those games that I look back and, it's one I was very under the weather in that one. We had a couple guys under the weather. So it was a tough one. I always look back. I feel like I'm a coach that normally has good energy, and I just didn't muster it enough in that one. And I've really that one's bothered me a lot. And I know our guys are ready to go back and compete again against that one. Then you're playing Freed. They're 10-1 at the halfway point of conference. And take away the 2-point loss to Georgetown last week, the only other team that really pushed them and had a chance or should have beat them is us at home. And it was an opportunity that we let slip away. It was one of those games that, unfortunately, I thought was some of the beginning of our downfall of not being able to get over the hump. A little bit of foul trouble late in that game hurt us, but it's one of those we know we can play with them. We got to be better, though, now than we were at home because we're on the road, so it'll be tough. But these are 2 challenges that we have to accept and be ready to go and try to get 2 wins. So we take a look at some of the numbers from that matchup with Bethel and the Tigers coming up this week, tomorrow night. In fact, 8:30 Eastern Time to start. Campbellsville 7-10 on the year, Bethel 9-7. The 2 teams have some similarities there in some of the numbers. Should be a good game down in McKenzie, Tennessee. And then we'll also take a look there at Freed-Hardeman as Campbellsville will visit a team highly ranked, Freed-Hardeman. 14-3 on the year, 83.5 points per ball game, 52% from the floor. They shoot it very well, and that's a team that'll throw a lot of bodies at you, Coach. They go really deep. Some young guards. They can hit you a lot of places. Of course, Brandon Thomas inside as well. Yeah, and I don't know the score off the top of my head at our place, but you see they're averaging 83, and I think we held them either high 50s or low 60s. We were very good defensively that game. Now, the Brandon Thomas, as you said, he did not play much that game as he went down with an ankle injury, and he's back and playing well in conference, shooting 75% from the field, which is very good. But I also feel with Malik, I think Malik is ready for that matchup, is excited about that matchup. And, again, in our conference, every week you're probably going to play a top 25 team. And we've had these opportunities, and we've been very close. But we're excited for this chance. We got to worry and get Bethel first, but excited for another top 10 matchup to try to get another win.
Coach, safe travels. Best of luck
Thanks,
this weekend.
Sir. Appreciate you.
Tigers and Lady Tigers in Tennessee this weekend. I'll be along for the call of all 4 games starting on Thursday. The Lady Tigers tip off at 6:30 Eastern. Coverage begins at 6:15. The Tigers to follow. And then on Saturday, 2 Eastern, 1:45, our start time on 88.7 The Tiger. Coach V's club will follow there at 4 o'clock. A special thanks to Coach Brent Vernon for joining us this week, as well as the head coach of the Lady Tigers, Ginger High Colvin, Matt Payton. We'll see you next time here on Tiger Timeout.